This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Expendables? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friend Ryan here with me, and we're talking about Mickey 7, the book, and Mickey 17, the movie. They added 10 more Mickeys for the movie. Movie just recently came out. We both saw it, and we both read the book beforehand. And this was kind of a fun sci-fi read. I was not aware of it until I saw the previews for the movie. It looked like a fun movie, and that just kind of spawned our interest in the story.
Yeah, I agree. Everything you said, I hadn't heard of the book or the movie really until you brought it up. But it's definitely an interesting premise, sci-fi, heavy, cloning, colonization, a lot of things in there that can, I think it's a recipe for a good story.
Mhm.
And as such, I enjoyed both the movie and the book, though they weren't really without their flaws. And um, but I think that if it looks interesting to you, that you should read it slash watch the movie.
And I think we'll get into spoilers pretty quickly here, but maybe just before we do, overall thoughts on the story. You mentioned some cloning things, there's some colonization. So there's kind of this, usually good sci-fi stories have a couple interesting thought pieces, premises. A lot of times it's around like what is humanity type of questions. Did you read Murderbot? Ryan, did you read those
I
as
did
well?
not read Murderbot.
Okay.
I read
There's a lot of
Bobiverse.
there's a lot of similar, yeah, Bobverse as well, kind of has some similar types of thoughts. The book is not long. Honestly, the movie was longer than I expected because I thought they kind of, the movie dragged out the story a little bit at times. But I don't know, like give us a primer for what someone can expect in the story if they're maybe interested but not sure.
Yeah, so essentially the story is about Mickey, who is an expendable, which is basically somebody who is cloned over and over again. Each time they die, they make a new clone and they re-upload his memories into this clone. So it's his same body with his memories up until he uploaded last time. And and then they send him on essentially suicide missions, developing vaccines, exploring uninhabited areas of the planet, um, fixing dangerous parts of the spaceship, things that a normal person or uh, any person is expected to die, and so they can just easily replace him. And um, the premise is that there's one time where he doesn't die, but they think that he did die, and so they made a clone of him, and so now there's two, they're multiples of Mickey, and that is kind of the cardinal sin of cloning in this universe. You should never have
Mhm.
multiples.
And then chaos kind of ensues from there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's the story. And the book is like 250-ish pages long. It's like 10 hours if you're listening to it. And the movie is, I don't, like I said, kind of longer than you'd expect. But yeah, that's I think that's a pretty good primer for the story. Yeah.
So
So yeah, let's jump
I
into
just
spoilers. Yeah, what are some thoughts you had?
well, I wanted to know before spoilers. Um, if you had to recommend somebody either read the book or watch the movie, what would you do?
Hmm. Like the movie was more entertaining, but the book presented some themes in more interesting ways that had me, thinking about uh, humanity, etc., type of thing. So if you're looking for more entertainment value and like I don't know. Maybe I thought the movie would be more fun than it actually, like it was fun, but I thought the movie might be a little more bizarre, off the wall than it was. But it was definitely like well made and pretty cool. So there's that. But then, the book maybe has like more substance to it.
Okay.
So that's what I would kind of balance in trying to come up with that and maybe like determine what the person that I'm recommending might want more of.
Right. Yeah, I thought that the most redeeming quality of the movie was Edward Pattinson as an actor. I think he did a great job
You
playing
mean
Mickey.
you did a funny little slip there. You mean Robert Pattinson, who played Edward in the Twilight movies, right?
Dang. Wow. Yeah.
He's
I really did. Yeah, Robert
he's
Pattinson,
really become that character for you. Not
who
even his role as Batman could
probably would
change
hate the
that. Yeah.
fact that he is so well known as Edward from Twilight. Um, yeah, so he was a phenomenal actor, great in this movie. I shouldn't say was, he is a phenomenal actor. He's still acting.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was really good too. I mean, he had to
yeah.
play two versions of himself, one in very two different personalities as well,
Mhm.
and kind of like interact with himself. There was some kind of vibes from no spoilers, but the last episode of Severance season 2 has some similar type of acting required, and like yeah, yeah. Robert Pattinson was very impressive in this movie.
Right. And I think that he, increased my enjoyment of the movie quite a bit. I would probably give the movie maybe like a 6.5, or 7 out of 10. But if he wasn't in it, I would probably be maybe like 5.5 out of 10.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah, his performance probably bumps it up a point and a half. I agree with
Yeah.
that. I'd probably give the movie, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Okay. All right.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of gave you a little bit of a book versus movie pros and cons, but I think, I mean, it's hard because they're different mediums and it's a lot easier to remember movies because you're seeing them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall, I liked the movie better. But after reading the book, I thought so. I read the book first and then I saw the movie. After reading the book, I thought this is an interesting book. It's got some flaws. I think the movie could be really cool. And so I had pretty high expectations. I don't think the movie met those expectations. Like, I feel like there was potential for a better movie than what actually got made.
Right. Especially like with Robert Pattinson and also the director. I don't what is his name?
Yeah, let's
Put
look up the direction name. He's Korean. He
putting
also
putting you on the
did,
spot. He did
yeah.
Parasite. He directed Parasite
hmm
and won like Best Picture, right?
Yeah. So he was pretty well known, and I'm okay. So his name is Bong Joon Bong Joon-ho,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean, part of seeing his name attached to it and like the credentials that he has made me pretty excited for it.
hmm Yeah, and I didn't have as high expectations going into the movie because I think I had heard that it had mixed reviews. So I wasn't like, expecting to see just like Lord of the Rings caliber um, movie adaptation, but I think it largely lived up to what I was expecting. Maybe a little
Mm.
bit better, but
Overall, I was surprised at how slow it was in certain parts.
yeah, it felt like um so I feel like the book did really good at like, you know, the most of the story, and then the ending of the book felt kind of rushed to me, and I almost feel like the movie was like a little bit of the opposite, in which there was like so much of him,
Mm.
going back in time, remembering things, and Mickey literally like explaining the story to you, and like you weren't in the moment a lot. He was just like explaining how he got to an expendable, and that took up a large period of time. And then the ending also took up quite a bit. I think they did the ending better in the movie than in the book. Um, but so I guess it was just interesting how it felt like, the flaws were very different, in my opinion, from the book and the movie, and, almost flip-flopped there.
Do you think in the book the ending was rushed? In the movie, the ending was better, but you felt like it was better set up in the book?
Yes. I
Mm.
felt like the story
Yeah.
and the characters, and I mean, I think that's kind of what you expect in a book is, you just
Mm.
spend more time with the characters. There's more dialogue. You can develop them a bit better.
I
Um,
think that's a good point you made that it's kind of a unique story structure where there's a lot of flashbacks, and both the book and the movie had those. They're kind of interspersed, but the actual like present day action is not all that much. Like the story starts with him getting marooned and left for dead, and then he comes back and well, he gets rescued by the creepers, and he comes back, and then there's a copy of himself, and they kind of mess around for a little bit, and then we're basically at the ending of the story at that like we get to the climax. And in the movie they added a bunch of stuff with Mark Ruffalo's like Marshall Trumpian character that we'll talk
yeah.
about in a little bit, I'm sure. But there's not all that much to it, and it kind of seemed like the story was missing like one additional like big piece. Like there needed to
hmm
be another action set piece. There needs to be another element to the story. We need another a character to another, take a big step forward as a secondary character to do something else. Like we were just missing one additional thing to make it like a real complete story.
Yeah, and because there were like days in which, Mickey 7 and 8 in the book, which is Mickey 17 and 18 in the movie, they're both like switching off a little bit. Like one Mickey 7's taking most of like the missions, and like there's a lot happening with like trying to figure out, well, why are the creepers attacking us now? And um there's more like mystery to it. And you're right, where it's like in the movie you kind of like set up the background, the characters, and then you finally get back to the present. And then you're not in the present for very long, and then it's, the whole cascade of events that's basically the
Mm.
ending of the movie.
The movie added the whole the movie added the whole assassination attempt
hmm
from Mickey 18, and then them getting imprisoned, and his friend, they in the movie his name's Timo, but in the book his name's Berto. His friend is a drug dealer, and
hmm
the guy is still like out looking for him. Like the movie added a lot of these side things that I think needed to happen, and like it was good, I guess. Like it wasn't bad at all, but it like you didn't really care about any of that stuff. I think the only thing you really care about is the creeper plot and the stuff with Marshall and the cult is interesting. I don't know, like was that like weird or funny enough to suck you in and get you interested in like what's gonna happen with the colony?
Honestly, it kind of felt forced to me, like the humor with the Marshall's character in the movie. It was like it was like him trying to, be like funny with his wife. And I don't know if like Mark Ruffalo is, the best type of person with that sense of, or that form of humor, I guess.
Mm.
It just seemed a little like weird to me.
Just kind
Um,
of the bizarro, but also under the radar, like supposed just subtle humor. Like the audience knows it's funny, but none of the characters are reacting.
Yeah.
with the same
Hmm.
humor that the audience would. I mean, it's a Trump parody, and I don't know, like at this point in 2025, I've seen so many Trump jokes and parodies in the past 10
Hmm.
years that it's like, oh, another one.
Yeah. It's like this isn't funny anymore. This is my reality that we're living
Yeah.
in. So there was one part that I kind of chuckled, which was where he was doing like the Trump dance where he's like sticking up his it's like barely on screen, but I was like, "Oh,
Uh,
yep, there's the, Trump rally dance."
yeah, the dinner where he's testing out the new whatever it was on him. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then he threw in they added in that character named Kai, who was renamed from Cat in the
Hmm.
book. And I do not understand the point of that whole like romantic triangle that was like kind of tried to be developed and then quickly abandoned. At the same time, there was the weird threesome thing going on with his clone and Nasha. And yeah, in the movie, there was a lot of this stuff that was just kind of like thrown in there, and we're trying to make this interesting as we kill time to get to the conclusion. And like it was all okay, but yeah, it wasn't like ever super intriguing or super well tied together.
Hmm. I mean, and a lot of that stuff was in the book. It was just, like abbreviated as you would expect with,
Yeah.
cat. There was like some like possibly romantic subtext between Kat and Mickey in the book. Um, and I mean, that was obviously blown up much more than it was in the book in the movie. Um, and so, but in the book, the primary thing is that motivates Kat at the end to turn them in is her desire because she wants to be an expendable because she's afraid of dying. And in the movie, it's more like, wait, she doesn't turn them in the movie, right?
No, no, she
No,
doesn't.
she doesn't. Okay, so yeah, it's really interesting, um, to like look at the differences between the movie and the book and just wondering like why exactly did they
Mm,
make that change? And like one of the big things is why is it now Mickey 17 and 18 rather than Mickey 7 and 8? Like does 10 more deaths really like make you feel for Mickey that much more like as an expendable? Do you sympathize with him more? Is it more
yeah.
significant?
Yeah,
I mean,
my theory, I thought about this same thing as well, and I think it's a really interesting question to ask for all adaptations. Thought about it a bunch with Wheel of Time because I mean I'm fine with them making changes, but then you also have to wonder like what went on, why did they try to do this, how are they trying to tell the story? I mean, I think
hmm.
it fits, it fits what we're doing with our podcast where we're talking about stories and how they're developed and why people make decisions they do in creating stories. But my thought on the additional numbers of Mickeys was that there was going to be some like funny, bizarro montage of him dying in weird ways. And I
Hmm.
kind of pictured this as almost like the opening to the movie, as like introduction to the whole idea. And it's going to be somewhat violent and maybe gruesome, but like this is, we're showing that like he's an expendable. We don't really care about his life. And but they never really did that. And honestly, I was kind of disappointed because I thought that like a montage like that would like really serve the movie pretty well in getting you started. Like it'd be a nice way to kickstart the movie.
Yeah, and it didn't seem unreasonable like for the amount of times he died in the movie to think like, oh yeah, he could be Mickey 7 in the movie. It's not,
Mhm. Right.
unreasonable to
Because
believe
they
that.
showed his arm getting blown off on the spaceship, outside the spaceship one time. And then most of the other Mickeys just died in like the vaccination testing, right? Like I don't remember them in the movie ever showing other interesting ways or things that happened to him. So yeah, I think he could have just been Mickey 7 and it would have made sense for what they did in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the other big change was um the creepers. They were kind of changed into like more cute, cuddly creatures. And maybe so there is actually a sequel to the book Mickey 7. Um and I didn't read that. I don't know if you've read it, but I wonder if they've
I haven't read
brought
it.
some of the elements from
Hmm.
the sequel into the movie.
Hmm. Possibly. Yeah,
Because at the end of the
I don't
movie,
know.
you really don't know what the motivations of the creepers are. I mean, I guess you still don't, other than like surviving and living on the planet, you don't really know what the motivation. They do seem pretty intelligent in both the book and the movie.
Mhm. Well, I thought it was interesting that they changed them away from this like hive mind thing that they had set up in the book. And I thought that was well done in the book because it mirrored what was happening with Mickey, where they like recognize one of them as the prime, right? Because there's multiple copies of him, and it kind of gets to this
Hmm.
question of like where does the soul reside? And they talk about the ship of Theseus analogy quite a bit, which is this idea of if you slowly replace each bit of a ship over time, like you've replaced everything, but is it still the same ship? Like yeah, kind of, but also no. So if you replace a Mickey over and over again, like at what point is this a different person? So like all of those questions kind of tie into the creepers as the hive mind, and like that all parallels pretty well. But they just kind of abandoned that in the movie, and instead the creepers are just like generic, creepy aliens, and they it's really illustrated by the fact that they care about this one like baby that's being trapped on the ship. But if in fact they were a hive mind, like they wouldn't really care about like one vestige of the hive that they had
Hmm.
captured. So yeah, I don't know. They just kind of abandoned that, and kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. And I feel like the movie did not really try too hard to get at these like harder hitting like philosophical ideas. I mean, they didn't like totally abandon it. Like there's definitely Mickey musing about, being a copy and all that, but I don't know. Those things are maybe better suited to book to reading through because you have a little more time to develop ideas and write it
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of another interesting change, which is that it seems like in the movie he's just kind of like able to remember pretty much everything that like, the previous Mickey who died, like up until he died, he could remember that. But in the books, it's like a very big plot point that, he can only remember up to the last time he uploaded. So if he
Mm,
uploaded a few weeks before his death or, 10 minutes before his death, he would only be able to remember the 10 minutes. So it's like that Mickey really hasn't experienced the book Mickey hasn't really experienced death because he doesn't ever remember dying. Whereas, the Mickey in the movie does.
mm,
And I don't know if
yeah.
it's just hard. There's so many different things like to explain every different element of world building in a movie. But it seemed kind of like an interesting thing because I feel like at the end of the movie, and maybe it's both the movie and the book, he came to the conclusion that like each Mickey is essentially a different person. And so, you know, you're afraid to die because that's all you get as, your iteration of Mickey. Because the next Mickey that comes isn't going to be you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is the message of the book, or at least it's where the story is trying to take you because the different Mickey iterations are so different. In the movie they made Mickey 18 way different than Mickey 17. Mickey
Yeah.
7 and 8 are kind of different, but not nearly as much where Mickey 17 is kind of a coward and kind of a loser, honestly. And
Hmm.
Mickey 18 is just like brash and somewhat insane and
Hmm.
even like described as psychotic by Mickey 17. So, very different personalities. Maybe somewhere in there on the other, 16, there were maybe some more normal ones. But yeah. I mean, I like what you're saying. I think the message is that like each one of these copies are individuals, and then you kind of get to the question, I think, which is more of an open question of like, okay, so then like where does the human soul reside in all of this? And from like a spirituality standpoint, like how do you explain if something like this were to happen, how would that work?
Yeah, and I think it could have benefited, and maybe they go into this in the second book a little bit more, but um, there is like the natalists that kind of believe that you only get one body, like the body you're born into is basically, I think, has the only soul, and then every clone after that doesn't have one. So you're kind of viewed as an abomination in in the book. And I don't think they really, well, I guess they do call him like an abomination, and like they kind of act a little disgusted in the movie. Yeah, now I do remember them
What
talking about that in the movie.
was that was that more just because they got to the stage where there were copies and the act of having two copies of a clone like that was discussed more with, yeah, I don't remember, the original scientist who developed it in the movie. I don't remember how they did this in the book. Actually, I think in the book wasn't there like a whole planet full of copies that was like taken over, like
Yeah, there were
it was a much
thousands
larger
of them.
complex. Yeah.
He like took over like the whole colony, and there were thousands,
Uh-huh.
and and yeah, like one other near colony sent like a ship with like basically bombs to communicate, and but he had to stop to decelerate, this ship did, and um so these, anyways, read the book. It's interesting.
But
I can't explain it all.
in the movie, the conflict was a lot smaller scale in that this
Hmm.
scientist was a serial killer who was killing homeless people, and then the police raided his compound and found all these copies. And like since
Yeah.
then, they said, okay, we're only going to allow this technology to be used in the colonies, like well away from Earth. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, much smaller scale. But I mean, if I'm remembering right, I feel like most of the abomination talk was around the fact that he had copied himself, and there were two existing at the same time. And
Right.
I mean, he wasn't the most popular guy other than with Nasha, which was never really explained. I guess they just kind of like had a connection, and she's just like a super nice, loving person. Uh, but other than her, like no one seems to like him very much, except for Kai, who is
Yeah.
also very interested in him.
Yeah, it was very very different because in the book they talk a lot about you know people being interested in sleeping with him purely because of the fact that he was an expendable, and like I
Mm.
guess that was some people's kink, um whereas yeah, in the movie they didn't explore it, but for whatever reason, yeah, he attracted both Vasha and Kai. And
I I think Kai wanted to hear about death from him because her friend had just died. That was
Okay.
a little
Yeah,
bit of an
that's true.
explanation.
But I mean, there was the time where she sat next to him in the cafeteria, and then
Yeah,
Vasha was like,
true,
back
true.
off.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the side characters had more to do in the books, or sorry, in the movie than the book to some degree. Like they gave Nasha this whole like side plot of she becomes like part of the committee or whatever, and they end up blowing up the copier at the end. So she becomes a little bit more interesting of a character. I think Marshall was more and less interesting. Like his whole crazy cult leader thing was interesting, but didn't have much depth to it. But in the book, his natalist philosophy, like I thought that had a lot more depth to it, but the character itself like didn't have a whole lot of color. And then other than that, like, what the only other side character was Berto slash Timo, and they
Hmm.
changed the backstory there. In the book, there was this whole backstory about how Mickey was going to bet on him and some kind of like what was the sport? I don't remember what the sport was. It was like it's almost like I imagine pickleball, but it was
Yeah,
probably some it's like badminton, something like that.
yeah, like tennis. That's kind of
Yeah.
what I imagined in
Like
my.
Birdo was like super good. He was like a savant at a lot of things, and he became friends with Mickey. And then over the course of some things, Mickey like got into debt, and it was kind of Berto's fault because this guy was just a kind of a jerk to him and used his friendship a lot. So like the vibes of the relationship was still the same, but the details were pretty different. And he was not a drug dealer.
Yeah, I felt like his character was kind of nuked, honestly. Like he was just changed into like a sleazy guy who kind of like used Mickey, and Mickey just stayed with him because he had no other friends. And in the
Mm,
books, he seemed like a little bit more dynamic, and like he wasn't really trying to like screw over Mickey. I think he was, a little bit more just he was afraid and trying to hide the fact that he was afraid. And um so I definitely liked Berto in the book a lot better than Timo in the movie. It seemed like he was almost just there for like comic relief a little bit, and
yeah.
even Marshall in the movie, like he was definitely there for the story, but like it felt like most of the changes they made to his character were just for comic relief.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just a caricature of
Mhm.
honestly Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like I said earlier, I feel like the movie had a lot of things that were like both more and less at the same time. And this character like rundown deep dive into some of these side characters, I think kind of illustrates that.
I mean, I do think that the changes for Vasha were largely positive in general. They expanded her character a bit from
That's
just
true. They
like a
gave,
romantic side
yeah,
interest to
yeah.
having a large uh plot to pay, although her speech at the end seemed a little cheesy.
But yeah, at least they gave her more to do and she wasn't just a romantic interest. She probably would have failed the Bechdel, that's what it's called, right? Bechdel test in the book, but I think the movie passes.
Is that the test where it's like, does the character contribute anything to the plot other than just being the like romantic interest of the main character?
Yeah, I think there's maybe some other details to it. It's something about like if they're having a conversation, is the conversation ever like not revolve around the male main character, something like that. But
Okay.
yeah, to the effect, like what you just said, like do they contribute anything more on their own other than just romantic interest? And
Hmm.
yeah, at least she did as something else, although there is kind of an obsession around Mickey that's, I don't know, it doesn't seem completely believable because like
Right.
she seems to be, pretty capable. Like she's this like all-in-one cop slash firefighter slash what, like she's obviously got a lot of skills,
Hmm.
but she's hanging out with Mickey, who, Robert Pattinson plays well, but he just comes off as a loser, like not very cool, doesn't really know how to do anything, not all
Yeah,
that smart. But this
doesn't have a
really
lot going
capable
on.
woman, yeah, she's like really interested in him. Like, why? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think I definitely agree with you that their romance isn't super believable, or any romance with Mickey 17 would be super
Yeah.
believable. I mean, maybe with that one girl on the like medical team who was uh kind of very nice to Mickey, or nicer
Oh
than the
yeah.
rest of the medical team.
Yeah.
Maybe like a romance more with her would be more believable rather than, like a James Bond, you know, astronaut
Uh
woman.
yeah. And I was trying to think, well, okay, maybe a previous Mickey was cooler and she fell in love with that one, and now she's just like kind of stuck in the relationship because it's kind of messed up to
Yeah,
break up with him just because he dies and the next one's not very cool. But
yeah.
Mickey 1, we saw a bit and he wasn't very impressive either.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, all in all, I think I would recommend the movie for lighthearted, fun, not really don't take the movie too seriously, and fans of Robert Pattinson, aka Edward Pattinson.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good summation. And then I think the book, yeah, I think that these two themes, the theme of like the colonization and the creepers is like kind of started to explored. Maybe it gets explored more in the sequel. It's kind of generic in the book. So like colonization is bad and it can be really disruptive. Like, okay, like we've all seen Avatar and many other things. Like we kind of get this idea already. But I think the more interesting theme is like the cloning and, like where does the human soul reside, and at what point is it, is Mickey 7 different than Mickey 8? Are they both people? Like that type of thing, I think is a really interesting idea that sci-fi keeps on going back to, at least the sci-fi I've read, which admittedly is not a lot, but it seems like a pretty common thing that's been explored in a lot of different angles. And I enjoyed the discussion in this book.
So we gave the movie, I think you gave it like a 7 out of 10. I gave it like a 6.5, or 6.5 to 7. Um, what about the book? What would you give that out of 10?
Honestly, it's pretty similar. Maybe I'll bump it up another half point. Honestly, in having this discussion, I'm realizing a lot of weaknesses in the movie that, in watching it, if you don't take it too seriously, it's just kind of some lighthearted fun and explore some ideas. But yeah, I think there's a lot of just kind of like empty space to it. And but the problem is the book has a lot of weaknesses as well. So it's
Right?
like both of them present really interesting premise, but like don't expound on it in the right ways to make it a super interesting story. Maybe the book is a little bit higher, but I don't think I can give the story any higher than a 7 out of 10 in either. So I'll say the book gets a 7A and the movie gets a 7B. And I don't know,
There,
honestly, I give so many things like a 7 because I just have trouble being harsh. Maybe I'll drop this down. Maybe they're both sixes
oh
because
wow.
I don't know. Like this story, it's frustrating. The potential versus the execution was lacking, I think, in both mediums.
Yeah, I think so. I went into reading the book thinking that it was a standalone. And so it was a little bit I think frustrating not having all of my questions answered in the book. Um, but maybe that was more of just like me and my expectations. But I do think I do stand by the fact that the ending of the book seemed rushed. Like all of a sudden it was like you found out they're multiples. Okay, we're gonna send you on a suicide mission where each of you have like this antimatter bomb, and then Mickey 18 dies like off screen, and then Mickey 17 gets his bomb, and um I don't know, kind of like works his way back in, like threatens his way, and um
Hmm.
like gets back in, but you don't have a lot of resolution as to like what do the creepers want, like what's gonna happen long term. In the movie, you get all those things. Um, and it's not necessarily like the most interesting ending, but at least it is an ending that I felt like was given a bit more time proportionally than the ending in the book. So, but I do think that I liked, most of the book more than most of the movie. So this is my long roundabout way of saying I think I stick by like a 6.5 for the movie and probably a 7 for the book. So pretty close to you.
Okay. I'm gonna try to be more fairly harsh in the
Okay.
like, yeah, more fair, but also, if something is not quite up to snuff, I'm gonna try to call it out a little more rather than like try to be all nice, which is my usual. People, yeah, that's not helpful for reviewers to say that everything is average, is it?
No, probably not. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it highlights those that stand out. So the books that are really bad and really good, but you don't get
Yeah.
a lot of differentiation in the middle of the pack books.
I don't think this was really bad by any means, but I'll say below average.
I think that there are a lot of other science fiction books that I would have rather had adapted than this one.
Yeah, agreed. We will be able to see, and since you said that, you should try Murderbot because we'll see an adaptation for that, I believe, later this year
Okay,
on Apple TV or Apple Plus.
great. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to start that one.
those are several short stories as well. So you can pretty easily just like read a story or two in a few hours and get a sense for it, see if you like it or not. Cool. All right, that's our review of Mickey 24, 7 plus 17. Whatever we're
Nice.
calling this review. So thanks for tuning in, Expendables. If you want to see more from Fantology, you can do that on our website and invites to join our Discord, where you can chat about this book, which we read for our monthly book club. So we have a few members that all tuned in and read the book together and chatted about it later. If you want to join in something like that, or you just want to just kind of like creep around and see what people are saying. I kind of described that weird, but maybe creepers was just on the mind. But anyway, the Discord is a fun place to be for any like fantasy science fiction stuff, and you can join that episode or links are below in the episode description. That's kind of a word jumble, but the gist of it is come join us and hang out on the internet and have fun.
Yes, join us.
All right, Ryan. See you later.
Talk to you later.